In A Room of One's Own, we can see how Woolf's exploration of male privilege and the patriarchy, sexism and the oppression of women, the importance of money, women as writers, and truth and integrity in writing reflects aspects of the world as it was when Woolf composed her essay. Picture this. It's October 1928, and you're a student at Newnham College, one of the two women's colleges at Cambridge. Girlton was founded in 1869, and Newnham 2 years later. It's been a long, hard fight for women's education, and there's still a way to go. It took over 600 years for women to be allowed to attend university in England. But even in 1928, Cambridge still refuses to award degrees to its female students, even though they often outperform the boys in the exams. Hey team, just a reminder, if you like this video, please hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It really helps the channel out, and our next upload could be on something taught in your next class. Thanks, and back to the video. You've read about the Cambridge anti-women demonstration of 1897. When the question arose about whether female students should be given degrees, male students protested in the streets. They threw fireworks through Newnham's windows, mutilated effigies of female students, and pushed the burnt remains through Newnham's gates. Dark days indeed. Even among the privileged and well-educated in England, equality for women has been considered an outrageous idea. When the same question was raised and defeated twice in the early 1920s, crowds of jubilant Cambridge men rioted again. They used a handcart to ram the gates of Newnham College, inflicting terrible damage on the beautiful wrought iron gates. You were so enraged about this, even as a youngster, that you vowed to become a Newnham girl. And if those boys ever rioted again, you'd stand arm in arm with the teachers at the gates, just as they did in 1897, and push back against the tide of male anger. And here you are. Today is a special day. You're attending a much-anticipated lecture on the topic of women and fiction, delivered by the formidable Virginia Woolf. Hopefully, she'll sign your copy of Mrs. Dalloway afterwards. This was how the young women of Girton and Newnham colleges must have felt when Woolf visited in 1928. Did they know they were witnessing literary history in the making? Woolf's lecture was published in 1929 and soon became a landmark feminist text. Born in 1882, Woolf is one of the most important writers in the English language. Her life spans key moments in British history, including the Victorian era, Edwardian era, and post-war modernity. Not to mention the early feminist movement and women's suffrage from 1918 to 1928. What a time to be alive! Woolf's engagement with social issues made her a feminist icon, while her constant innovation as a novelist made her an influential modernist. Modernism was an artistic and literary movement that extended throughout the first half of the 20th century. Its aim was to break classical and traditional boundaries and find fresh, new ways of expression. Some of modernism's key figures were part of the Bloomsbury Group, of which Woolf was a founding member. They were a bohemian bunch of artists, writers, intellectuals and poets who met every week for drinks and conversation. They were a nucleus of modern thinking and writing, and were scandalised in the press for their lifestyle choices. As the writer Dorothy Parker said, the Bloomsburys lived in squares, painted in circles, and loved in triangles. Woolf came from a large, blended, and well-to-do English family. Her father, Leslie Stephen, was a prominent author and editor, while her mother, Julia, was famed for her beauty and aristocratic lineage. While they encouraged her writing, Woolf's parents disapproved of formal education for girls. They were very Victorian like that. Woolf became a harsh critic of Victorian society, describing it as a ruthless machine. A girl had no chance against its fangs. No other desires, say to paint or to write, could be taken seriously. A ruthless, girl-crushing machine with fangs? Could Woolf be alluding to the British patriarchy? You know, that entrenched system of male dominance that pervades all aspects of society? Make no mistake, men had all the power and the money and the influence in 1920s Britain. Have things changed since then? In A Room of One's Own, Woolf's narrator muses while reading the newspaper that the most transient visitor to this planet, who picked up this paper, could not fail to be aware that England is under the rule of a patriarchy. This is quite at odds with the British Prime Minister's feelings on the matter. It was only that year, 1928, that Lord Stanley Baldwin proudly announced that women will have with us the fullest rights. The ground and justification for the old agitation is gone. This was just after Parliament passed the Equal Franchise Act, which granted all men and women in Britain over the age of 21 the right to vote. Is the passing of laws enough to erase age-old cultural assumptions about male superiority? Woolf imagines that in the 2020s, women will be able to take part in all the activities and exertions that were once denied them. And if former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's opinion is anything to go by, the patriarchy is now a thing of the past. Hooray! In 2020, he explained this to a group of schoolgirls who visited 10 Downing Street. The Oxford-educated mathematician Dr. Anne-Marie Imafidon, who was sitting next to Johnson when he said this, flatly disagreed. The patriarchy in England is still prevalent. Well, it seems that dismantling that ruthless machine will take more time and effort. Will you join the struggle? Woolf was on a mission to tear down values and attitudes that kept women oppressed. This was probably sparked by her sense of injustice about her very Victorian education. While her brothers enjoyed the rigour and privileges of expensive private schools, Woolf and her sister were schooled at home. Even though she had free access to her father's extensive library, Woolf felt this was terribly unfair. In A Room of One's Own, Woolf foreshadows or hints at her rage against women's oppression in Chapter 1. Her narrator's run-ins with the beadle and the librarian at Oxbridge symbolise or represent various obstacles women face in society. These figures become motifs or recurring symbols throughout the essay. They represent men who act as gatekeepers, telling women where they can and can't go in society and what they can and can't have in life. Of course, one of the worst forms of oppression is to limit someone's access to education. Not only does this prevent them from cultivating their minds and abilities, but it also stops them from entering professions, expressing their gifts and talents, and fully participating in public life. Cambridge may have been the first English university to partially open its doors to women in 1869, but it was the last to confer degrees on them. This didn't happen until 1948, when Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, the Queen Mother, received an honorary law degree. Another way that English women have been oppressed is through fear. Sadly, England has a long history of violence against women. According to Professor Trevelyan's History of England, which Woolf's narrator consults in Chapter 3, wife-beating was the recognised right of a man and was practised without shame. This right was not removed from English law until 1891, during Woolf's lifetime. If that doesn't annoy you, the history of women's poverty should. That's right. In addition to their rights to an education, to vote and be free from violence, English women had to fight for access to their own money. It wasn't until 1882, the year of Woolf's birth, that married women in England could legally control their own money and property. Imagine that. Woolf laments the fact that, in England, women have always been poor, from the beginning of time. It was high time for women to have their share, but an economic recession during the interwar years made things difficult. By 1925, unemployment rates in England reached 70% in some places. Less than a third of English women were in the workforce, and those who were mostly had low-paying jobs like domestic service, shopkeeping, clerical or factory work. If you were married or a woman of colour, your chances of securing a job were even slimmer. The marriage bar wasn't abolished in England until 1946, and racial discrimination didn't become illegal until 1965. So, earning a living by your wits as a female writer in the 1920s was more of a bold aspiration than a practical reality. Your chances were better if you were white, thoroughly educated, and had a supportive husband or family. But even then, Woolf admits that your chances were still precarious. Like all things in the struggle for women's rights and equality, it would have to be won. Woolf encourages writers to take heart from their literary mothers. By that, she means pioneering female authors like Aphra Behn, Jane Austen, the Brontes, and George Eliot. They paved the way, and now it's our turn to take women's writing to the next level. Woolf urges women to get money by hook or by crook, travel, dream, and write all kinds of books, hesitating at no subject, however trivial or however vast. Does that sound like a plan to you? The Bloomsbury Group and other modernists were compelled to produce truly original work. Woolf's stream of consciousness style is just one example of her innovations that captivated readers with its newness. Remember, stream of consciousness is when thoughts and feelings are recorded in a continuous flow. Woolf strove to find ways to capture the flight of the mind, which resulted in beautiful poetic prose in her novels and stories. Her quest to convey the essence of human experience through language drove her to ceaselessly innovate. In fact, Woolf's best novels were written in the 1920s. That was a busy decade for her. For Woolf, fiction was always about truth. In A Room of One's Own, she refers to this phenomenon as integrity. It's the mysterious conviction you feel as a reader that a novelist has given you something that rings true. Integrity seems to be the holy grail of all novelists, because a century later, Neil Gaiman echoed Woolf's ideas when he said, "Fiction is the lie that tells the truth." For Woolf, the thing that upholds the integrity of novels written by women is when they write as women write, not as men write. This is the finest feather in the caps of Jane Austen and Emily Bronte. They stayed 100% true to their values and didn't budge in the face of criticism. Margaret Atwood, one of the greatest novelists of the 21st century, affirmed this in The Blind Assassin. The only way you can write the truth is to assume that what you set down will never be read. not by any other person, and not even by yourself at some later date. Otherwise, you begin excusing yourself. So, writing good fiction is like dancing as though no one's watching. You just have to let go. Are you brave enough to write the truth? Well done, team. In this lesson, we've covered how aspects of Woolf's context are reflected in her discussion of male privilege and the patriarchy, sexism and the oppression of women, the importance of money, women as writers, and truth and integrity in writing. Now you're ready to write scintillating essays that will make your literary mothers proud. We hope you enjoyed this Schooling Online production. For more easy lessons, check out our other videos.